Welcome, one and all, back into the depths of the neon gutter. My name is Burt Cohen. On today's episode, we're going to continue our theme of wonderfully terrible places we visited in Las Vegas. On the last episode, we described some of the bottom-of-the-barrel motels that dotted the landscape, but today we'll be talking about some of the other unique Vegas establishments our heroes visited throughout the years, the shithole hotel casinos. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my two co-hosts. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
And hey, Matt.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. So it's kind of hard to say. So I was trying to think of a better term for shithole hotel casino. I thought of maybe shotels. What about you guys? You got anything better than that?
Yeah, shotels sounds like a place where they have a show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like maybe a place in Branson.
Maybe shitholes.
Yeah, shitholes, but they didn't always, the shithole casinos didn't always have a hotel attached. So I was thinking Castinko.
You saved that one. That got me right in the funny bone. That was good.
I like that. Now, everyone knows Las Vegas for its beautiful, glittering billion-dollar resorts. But as we've described on our last episode and really throughout the season, there's plenty of creepy, cheap motels around town as well. Some of those places, though, just aren't big enough to be as weird as possible. For that, you need a full-fledged hotel casino. And there are plenty of those around town as well. But what, in your estimation, makes a shithole a shithole?
Well, especially when we first started going to Las Vegas in the 80s and 90s, I want to ask Matt why we would go in these places. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm trying to remember why we would even walk into these tiny, stupid joints. Like, I wouldn't have done that myself.
I know, and I was thinking about that, and I realized over the years, it was my passion. I kind of probably forced you guys into a lot of these places. If it looked dingy and creepy, I couldn't say no. I can't explain why that is, but I just love those places that have like character, not corporate character, but just character.
I'm having a moment too, because even in Orange County, where we all were living at the time, you took us to the tavern and the VIP room. These were these dive bars that were they were like Castinkos, basically, yes. But as little dive bars.
And how did you find them? Were you just driving around town? I mean, they couldn't have been advertising much in these places, right?
Driving around, word of mouth, and then fun books at the visitor center. These were the places that were most desperate for customers. So they would have the crummiest looking, cheapest looking fun book there, but they'd have some way of trying to get you in. They might offer you some nickels, or they might offer you, a free drink or whatever. But yeah, those were the ways. One of them I discovered with my sister at Christmas, and she was talking about some conference she was in Vegas, and she was on the Strip, and she needed to pee so bad, and they were stuck in traffic on the Strip, that she ran into this nearest casino she saw, and she said, I think it was called Little Caesars. And I was like, Little Caesars? I've never heard of that. Where is it? She said, oh my God, it was so awful. And I'm like, you have to tell me where it is.
Yeah. And so to get to your question, Bert, about how or like what, as mammals, we have actually very sensitive noses. We don't necessarily know that, but that's the first impression. You're in a shithole is the wave of fragrance that hits you when you walk in.
That's right.
Like, Las Vegas is a smoky town. Like, every place smells like cigarette smoke, but I guess the places that care about decor and their interiors, they either have filters or something. You'll smell cigarette smoke, but you walk into a shithole and it's like, first of all, the wave, it's as soon as the door opens, you just get hit by it. But then it doesn't take like a connoisseur's nose to smell, okay, urine, vomit, feces. Like, these are there and they're present. You can't miss them. Grease. And also, I don't mean to be classist, but there is the smell of the unwashed masses when you walk in. There's a sweaty kind of locker room smell to a lot of these places, especially when we would go in summer.
And they were like a fingerprint too, right? Because like a smell at a terrible place like the Imperial Palace was different than the smell at the Plaza or somewhere else, right? They were very unique and and the same smell stuck around for years. It didn't go away no matter what.
I have distinct olfactory memories of different casinos. You're right. There is a specific smell to different casinos, and I still have that. And to Dan's point, it's true. If I walked into a place, the smell immediately go, yes, I'm home. This is,
Yeah.
and some of them, it's a wave, it's a wall, it's a legitimate wall. Like some of them just you felt the density of the air change when you went in.
The bouquet had a lot to do with what food might be in there as well, because sometimes places had a little snack bar that would just be like this grease in the mix as well. I remember Little Caesars being mostly smoke, like really bad smoke.
Another one was the quality of the chairs. Like when you look at the quality of the blackjack tables, the quality of the chairs, do they look comfortable, or do they look like, is there duct tape? Do they have cheap brass colored legs? Those kinds of things. How low is the ceiling too?
That's also
shitholes tend to have low ceilings, and maybe that contributes to that bouquet, as Dan put it.
It's cheap construction. Like, yeah, I'm thinking of the Western that had low ceilings, and if you took all the machines out, it would just be like a multi-purpose room or something, where you couldn't say that about a big casino. Like when you walk into Caesar's Palace, you can see there's been some thought to the architecture and the sweeping ceilings and everything like that. A shithole just looks like it could have been a strip mall, could have been a carpet store, but they put
maybe it was.
Maybe it was. Little Caesars always reminded me of a carpet store. Like it had been a carpet store at one time, and then they said, "Hey, let's put a casino here."
Oh, we're selling just one carpet, and it stayed on the floor for 30 years with people
Nobody
walking
ever
on
bought
it. Never sold it. Never sold. Now, what are a few of these uptown shitholes, as we'd call them, that you guys that are mentionable?
First of all, we need the theme song. Uptown shithole. Yeah, but that's enough. But
you've been smelling like a sweaty dude.
I just love that town, Uptown shithole. It's just like, it's brilliant.
It's kind of like Skid Row Heights, which we'll talk about.
Also true. Well, Little Caesars came up already. That, like I said, it was a low ceiling, one story. About the size of a carpet store. I wonder how, I don't know about square
and
footage.
In a strip mall. Just a storefront in a strip mall.
And the sign outside was just like a sign that you would see on any other store. It said Little Caesars. I don't even remember if it said casino on it.
And it got its name because it was across the street from Caesar's Palace, right?
It was close to Caesar's Palace. It's where Paris is now. And another thing that cues you to shitholes is how many handwritten signs are there. Like at Little Caesars, there's always a handwritten sign on the door say, "Please close door behind you."
Right. I remember it had a small gift store, a gift shop at one end. It was just a cheesy gift shop. I don't remember if they had any merchandise for the casino, but they did sell novelty cigars, like foot-long novelty cigars, pretty much made out of like tobacco, the quality of brown paper bag. And I think I think you bought it, but I smoked it. So,
you did.
I smoked it because we went down. We were at that trip. We went to Binion's downtown, and we're trying to get in on a craps table, and it was crowded. So I lit the thing up and started smoking, puffing this foul smoke everywhere. This is one of the instances where I did act like a jackass, but it worked. People left the craps table.
This was like a foot long, 1.5 inch diameter novelty cigar. It was not intended for smoking. In fact, I'm sure the wrapper on it said like not for human consumption or something. But Dan did smoke. And I remember at one point during the evening, some guy looked at you with that huge thing and goes, "How long have you been smoking that?"
I said, "About this far."
Couple inches. that thing, you quickly understood how the shitholes got to smell like shitholes when you smelled that cigar.
True. Little Caesars was, I think, the first place I encountered student dealers, like dealers who had just gotten out of gamblers. Break-ins, exactly. And so we're sitting at the blackjack table, and they deal. Now I can't even remember. I'm so confused by this.
Clockwise.
They deal clockwise, right? Exactly. But somebody began to deal counterclockwise, which was a really novice mistake. And I think the pit boss or whoever came over to reprimand her and scream at her. But they didn't have their math down. There was a bunch of times we would look at each other across the table getting paid on a 22 because they couldn't add the cards fast enough.
A dealer stood on 16 once. Paid the table because she stood on 16.
We've encountered that elsewhere, but Little Caesars was the first time it was like, oh, you go somewhere where they're breaking in dealers, you can get some extra, it balances out the house edge.
And then they had a few penny slots, and I got a penny jammed in one of them once, and like it jammed the machine. And I was like, oh well, I'll just go play dollar blackjack. I sat down, played dollar blackjack. About a half hour later, this slot technician came up to me and handed me this penny and said, "Here, you got this jammed in the machine over there." It's like, oh, good, phew. I was worried about that penny. I mean, even that was a small amount for me.
If you were a regular there, it would have mattered.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, that was one of the first shitholes on this. It's definitely one of the biggest shitholes on the strip.
It was right next to Bally's, which is still there and big, and not the nicest, but definitely swank. And definitely
now rebranded the Horseshoe.
Now rebranded the Horseshoe. Yeah,
I'm not up to it. I'm not up to speed.
But the thing I remember about Little Caesars, I actually never was in Little Caesars, but you guys developed the term rat biscuit, which we continue to use today, or not so much today because it's hard to find them. But what's the term rat biscuit mean?
It's a 25-cent chip. Instead of a quarter, you get a little orange chip that represents 25 cents. When you get paid, when you get paid off on blackjack and you get 2 of those. I forget why we coined it, but
I think because they were orange and they were always pretty nicked up and beat up and dirty, so they looked like a rat had been chewing on them for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think it was actually Brett, a friend of mine, Brett, who came up with that term. But it was just perfect. And so we'd go into a casino, give me a sack of the rat biscuits. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? You have to explain to them. But yeah, it's a quarter. You can't use it for any other denomination than a quarter.
And we don't use that term anymore because there's not so many rat biscuits anymore.
Yeah.
All that cheap gambling has gone away.
Yeah,
exactly. So what are some of the other really kind of low-level dives on the strip that you guys would hang out in?
There was another place south of where Mandalay Bay is now. So way south, right down by the Welcome to Las Vegas sign on Las Vegas Boulevard, called the Klondike. And it had a Western, Klondike theme to it. It literally had air you could see. And it was the smelliest of all casinos. When you walked in, there was just like this fog. They served Guinness beer, which was a weird thing for a cheap
that's
casino.
A good beer. I know.
Yeah,
it's a really nice beer
and
for a really crappy place.
They always had, even until the day they closed, I think, they had a $1.99 spaghetti dinner. And you get breakfast for 99 cents. They had Guinness beer. Their one thing they did to their theme was they had this stagecoach hung on a wall in there, like a little tiny model stagecoach. And it always reminded me of those Chuck Wagon commercials when I was a kid, of the dog chasing the Chuck Wagon around the house. The other thing that was really cool there was they had dime roulette. You couldn't just bet one dime. You had to bet 50 cents, but they gave you dime chips. And you felt like a millionaire when you gave them a $20 bill and you got 10 stacks of 20 chips. You had this mass in front of you of chips.
Yeah, those were the mouse biscuits.
And it was always a consideration, like, well, I should just walk out with these. These are worth more than $20.
That's right.
Was the Klondike the place where you could go in and spin a wheel and win your airfare back home or something like that?
Vacation Village. That was even farther south. Okay. Vacation Village was a shithole that I never once gambled in, but I always spun the wheel and got like $3 or $10 or something. So yeah, if you went there within 3 hours of your flight, you could spin a wheel for something free. And that's the only reason anyone would travel that far south to go to a casino as shitty as the Vacation Village.
And that's worth pointing out too, that we would often do that and for $3 drive out all the way down to Vacation Village just for some free pull or free offer. It kind of kept us from sitting in one place blowing our money. Like, let's sightsee on the cheap.
Yeah.
This is, again, the origins of the cheapo.
That's another thing about the shitholes is they don't have a fountain. They don't have a show. So their only come on to get you in there is the price. At least something is going to be cheap. Vacation Village didn't have a lot of character though. And Klondike, other than the 200 roulette chips for a dime and probably $2 blackjack, there wasn't a whole lot of reason to be there. It actually smelled and was smoky enough that it felt like a real health hazard to stay in there very long. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about Peppermill though, because
Peppermill was awesome.
That was a good place. Character. That was that was our second favorite for a while after these Little Caesars.
And you're not talking about the famous restaurant that's still on the strip and drawing
Same
crowds.
company.
So Yeah. Okay. Where was that located on the strip then?
It was right by the Stardust. It was in a strip mall, in the corner of a strip mall. If you know where Tacos El Gordo is now, it was in the back corner of that shopping center. And
So very close to the restaurant.
very close to the restaurant, very close to the Peppermill restaurant. The Peppermill was a shithole. It had a low ceiling. It smelled. It was not very nice. Their come on was 25-cent margaritas or strawberry daiquiris, which were served by the security guard who also verified that you're 21 when you came in because he made the daiquiris. He was a security guard. Yeah. And the daiquiris were actually 27 cents because they charged tax on them. And the one thing about that place, they had dollar blackjack. So we played dollar blackjack there a lot. And they had like a deli with huge sandwiches too. But if you hit a blackjack at their blackjack tables, you got a raffle ticket. And we were playing there one time before we were 21. And I won the raffle. Like I hit a blackjack and they pulled my number. And so I was going to have to show my driver's license to get my prize. And so they have this big raffle wheel and I won a free spin on the wheel. And it was once every half hour. I spun it. It came up $1,000, $500, $200, $500 casino credit. And it landed on $2. And so over the loudspeaker in the entire casino, they said, "We have a big winner. Matt from California won $2." And then they didn't do anything. They took my driver's license, but they didn't notice that I wasn't 21, and they gave me $2 cash.
Not half bad.
Yeah.
Not half bad.
But I don't remember that place having the class or the flair of the restaurant. The restaurant, is so over the top, and the casino is just kind of black, and I don't even remember a whole lot of neon in there.
But we played a lot of dollar blackjack in those days,
Yeah.
and that was just a good place to do it.
Yeah, it was fun.
The gambling we would do in these places is, the lowest rent gambling we could do. It just you make $20 last as long as possible, little up, little down.
I don't think we ever had the illusion we were going to win money, and that was our approach to gambling. It's like it was just pure entertainment. How cheaply can we be entertained or entertain ourselves?
When you think about it, some of the biggest hotel casinos on the strip that are still taking reservations today have devolved into shitholes. And these might be maybe the most sad because they were once the newest, shiniest, most popular places in Las Vegas. And for me, the one that comes to mind is probably the Rio. And today's condition of the Rio may not quite be on par with some of the other places you've been talking about, but it really was the hippest, most fun place for a while in Las Vegas. And it's devolved through just neglect into being a place where they can barely give the rooms away, right?
I was there with my wife and daughter, and we went into the Excalibur. I remember when the Excalibur was built in the early 90s, and it was very exciting to see this medieval castle go up. And we saw a model of it in the Circus, like a maquette of it before it went up. And it was kind of very exciting. Like, what a great theme. It's like Disneyland on the strip. Now, this is 30 years later. We walked in, and the smell, it was that same experience of this is smoke, it's vomit. There's definitely someone peed in the corner. We came in the side entrance. So, and then the food that just stuck in there, that food smell. We couldn't even go in. I wanted to show them like the theme because it's one of the few remaining casinos where there's a half-assed attempt at a theme. But we started going up the gangway, and the three of us were like, we can't go in any further. So it's become this massive shithole. It's sad because it was.
But it's not an endearing shithole. Like the shitholes that I loved were the ones that were always shitholes, and they were doing everything they could just to stay afloat. And the places that
you like the underdog.
Yeah, the places that just let themselves go. Like, to be fair, Excalibur was never nice. It was never luxurious, but it was new and it was shiny, and
we spent time there playing
point.
Games and going into the basement and the midway and stuff. And they had that virtual reality early on.
Yeah, there was stuff there that we did, but those places don't endear themselves to me because it's their own damn fault. And that the Luxor is the same way, and
definitely
the Casino Royale.
Luxor was so amazing when it was built. Do you remember when it went up? It was like they're building a pyramid and it has this light. It was so exciting when it went in, and we were in there too, and it's just a ghost town. Like nobody's there. And the problem is they put the whole dining area smack in the center. There's a Nathan's hot dogs, and the whole place just reeks.
Well, remember when it opened, when it opened, they had a Nile River ride that went around the perimeter of the interior. And so the entire casino smelled like chlorine at first. Another one, Casino Royale, which when we started going to Vegas was called the Nob Hill Casino. And it was a low roller joint. It was a cheap place. And then it became Casino Royale, and it's really gone downhill. It was really ambitious when it started. It was like the reasonable, cheap place to gamble on the Strip, and you got a good deal, and it was a pretty cool place. And it's just evolved into just another crappy, rundown joint now.
Yeah, well, it was a great place for table games, especially craps. It wasn't the lowest limit, but it had 100 times odds for craps, and their table games were always packed. And there were people that would stay across the street at Caesar's Palace and come across the street to Casino Royale to gamble, because it was a great place. But I think COVID really just killed the place, and I don't think they have table games anymore there. But of course, they also did have entertainment for a while. Now it's just an Outback Steakhouse on their second floor level. But for a while, they had Cookie Jar, who was the epitome of the Las Vegas cheesy showman.
Yeah,
and we had a lot of fun watching Cookie Jar. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Cookie Jar was awesome.
He was a karaoke act. He basically had his karaoke machine and would sing, and great big wig on,
and he used
I
to be
that was a wig.
He had a residency at a place called the Continental, which is now I think Lucky Sevens or Silver Sevens off the Strip. It was Terrible Herbs for a while, and it's changed names again. But he had a residency there, and that was the only reason to go to the Continental, was to see Cookie Jar. And he packed that place at night back in the 90s. And, so he's been doing this. I don't know if he's still around, but he's been doing it for 30 plus years with that same fake black wig, and still doing Tone Loc's Wild Thing.
Lots of barking during the show, but
lots of
I mean, he started out with background singers and like a band and stuff, and then by the time we were watching him at Casino Royale, he was down to being a kind of a karaoke act. But
right, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, the rumor is always that he was chasing gambling debts, paying off gambling debts. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea.
He would talk about the lines and what was happening during he would check the monitors in the middle of his act, to see how the scores were going. So that may or may not have been a true thing, but I still have a $5 chip from the Continental with his face on it. So.
All right.
Oh, nice.
Love the jar. All right, we're going to take a quick break, guys, but if an evening playing weird games in an old man's basement sounds like a perfect trip to Las Vegas for you, you are not going to want to miss our next segment. Come on back.
Vacation Village, first with the most in bonus cash rewards for casino play, and selected Las Vegas's best video poker for 1996. Vacation Village is home of Super 21, which pays instant cash bonuses for table games, and you can sign up for daily Super Fun 21 tournaments. Bingo! Every Wednesday night at 8, you can win up to $3,000 at the Super Bingo Party, played from any seat in the casino. Vacation Village, where Las Vegas stays and plays.
A dog can get mighty hungry when he doesn't get his chuck wagon, because dogs love the soft meat-like chunks, the brown crunchy bits, the rich broth chuck wagon makes when you add warm water. Serve your dog chuck wagon. Chances are he's already waiting for it.
Welcome back to the Neon Gutter. Now, you guys, earlier I've heard you describe the downtown area in your early days as a little too fancy for your tastes. Probably something very few people have ever said in their lives, but it's not all glimmer and glitz downtown. Some places are actually pretty downtrodden. And when we think of downtrodden, we think of Dan's brother, Phil. So we brought him in for this segment. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
Hi, good to be here.
Great to
Welcome
have
to the
you.
Neon Gutter.
I feel slightly less downtrodden now.
Yay. Are you uptrodden at this point?
I think he might just be
I
trodden.
guess.
Okay, there you go, just trodden.
Yes.
Sorry.
Mid-trodden.
Sorry to interrupt.
So, guys, what was really the first place that caught your attention downtown?
Well, we started going downtown because we heard there were better gambling. It was cheaper gambling because the Strip has always been more expensive.
Sure.
Yeah, but the limits are higher to this day, and so we went down to start. We started gambling. I think it was the trip with the girls. We had some girls on one of the trips, which maybe we'll talk about at some point. But we all went to Binion's to play dollar craps. So that was, I think, the first time we escaped from the strip. We would play craps down at the Union Plaza. That's where we would throw rat biscuits. There was 25-cent craps. So those were like
nice
hour sessions at the craps table, for $40, where
25 cents with 10 times odds.
It was great.
Exactly.
It was
great. It's like,
and of course, free drinks keep coming.
Yep.
So,
free drinks, exactly.
And blackjack was down there too.
Blackjack,
$2 and $3 blackjack.
Yeah, the blackjack had more liberal rules where you could surrender and things like that. That was at Las Vegas Club, which was like our one main place to play blackjack, and Binion's became our one main place to play craps.
Binion's, I can't say enough good things about Binion's at that point. Dollar craps with 10 times odds. And what was amazing was we'd be there playing dollar, and there'd be a guy next to us playing $50 on the same line. Just everyone played craps at Binion's. That was the place to play it. And they must have had like 8 tables, and they were all packed, and it was so much fun. And the plaza was similar. The strip was getting huge then with the with the Excalibur and the Luxor and the Mirage, and downtown, which was still just Fremont Street that you could drive up and down, and everyone did with their sunroof open and someone hanging out of it. It was still just a street, and it was run down. They didn't know what their next move was. So their only move was to go down market to try to lure people that are cheaper. So the only people downtown were people who were angle shooters, who were looking for a great value, who were serious gamblers.
And there were all sorts of free stuff, the cheap free stuff. There was the $2.99 steak dinner at Binion's after midnight or whatever it was, and it's all these cheap food deals and free souvenir gimmick things they gave away, free keychains and
ice cream, cheap fried Twinkies and all that stuff.
Cheap digital watches given away for free and free stuff.
Professional slot player gloves.
Professional slot player
gloves. Because, that's the only way you're going to distinguish yourself from the amateurs is with your gloves. Everything downtown was not nice. The only place nice downtown back then was the Golden Nugget. But but there were still shitholes that were a step below. And we found them. We happily found them. So like if you went, just like on the strip, they weren't right in the middle of things. But if you went just off of Fremont Street, there was like the Hotel Nevada, which had dollar blackjack and was kind of a rundown hotel south of Fremont on Main Street. And they had their big calling card was Jimmy Guy, who's the one-man blues band. So this was a guy with a guitar, a harmonica, and cymbals strapped to his knees who would play blues, and they had a dance floor that might have been 8 feet by 8 feet of parquet in the corner of the casino, because that's all they had room for. And there'd be people dancing, and there'd be everyone hanging out and listening, and they had a big sign outside saying Jimmy Guy is here, and you're like, who the hell
Jimmy
is
Guy is here? And then I can only assume that if you're drunk enough, a drunk enough tourist sees that sign and says Jimmy Guy and mistakes him for some actual famous person that you'd actually want to go see, and
The one thing you could be sure of, no matter who it was, whether it was someone famous or not, their career had taken a fall if they were performing at the Hotel Nevada. Then, if we got farther away from it, we discovered the Gold Spike, which was just north of downtown on a street called Ogden, which is one street up. And this was a hotel casino with $18 rooms every night of the week, even Friday and Saturday. So, very quickly, that's where we played blackjack, and that's where we stayed. We always stayed there. But they had dollar blackjack. They didn't have any other table games, but they did have a poker table. They didn't have chips because they just had dollar blackjack. So you played poker with metal tokens, and you played blackjack with metal tokens, which makes for a very noisy poker game. It's the first place I ever played poker was a 1-3 7-card stud game at this table in this tiny casino. And they had a whole area called the Copper Mine, which was like, I don't know, there must have been 50 penny slots in there.
Oh, pennies.
A lot.
There was lots. Yeah.
And it was pennies. It wasn't like today when they say, oh, this is a penny slot. Pennies. This was literal pennies. You had to go buy rolls of pennies to play.
This is also one of the places with the most poignant of smells.
Yes.
Because there was actually a smell. I can actually get copper poisoning walking into the place.
We walked in, and Mike said, they had a revolving door. That was their like one
Yes.
pretense of being fancy. And you walk into the revolving door, and he says, "Smells like spoiled sausage." And then Dan said, "No, it smells like spoiled sausage in an ashtray." And I said, "No, it smells like spoiled sausage in a dirty ashtray in a biker's armpit."
Which was exactly it.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. Nailed it.
This,
And actually,
the mix of
it was
disparate elements that all came together to
it was
really.
problematic that the revolving door, because that actually is what kept most of the air in there. But I kind of assumed the city of Vegas said you need to install one of those to keep your air out of our air. So,
There was a big sign in the Gold Spike that
Yes.
said "Purified for your
For your
convenience."
convenience. For your
Yeah, for
convenience.
your convenience. Yeah,
your
so
breathing
convenience.
I'm not accepting any of these dispersions on the quality of air
Yeah,
at the
well,
Gold Spike as
it's your breathing
It's
I
convenience.
suppose if
officially
you
purified.
spun the revolving door around fast enough, you could kind of ventilate the place a little bit.
I don't think so. The smoke was being generated faster than it could escape. They had 50-cent cocktails at the bar in there. They had a 99-cent breakfast that got served on a styrofoam plate. They also had $1 slices of pie, which we almost always had at the end of the
at about
night.
3 a.m. Right?
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
pie.
their little snack bar. Yeah,
Slumped over in the snack bar eating $1
Little
slices
cafe.
of pie.
Right.
We had a rule when we first started going. You saved up your pennies all year long, and when we went to Vegas, you had to take your pennies with you, and you had to play them in the copper mine until they were all gone. And you would get pissed if you either had to win the progressive jackpot. There was a progressive jackpot worth over $50,000, or you had to play until all your pennies were gone. And you'd get pissed after about 30 minutes if you hit more money, because you're like, God, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
But no, you had to stay.
yeah,
till the
you just
pennies
want them
were
to go
gone.
away. It's like
Of all the people,
Get
Matt
rid of
was the
this.
most pissed because, of course, Robert boys bring the pennies in
Oh,
a jar
God.
and in a peanut can.
No. Well, that was the one year. Yeah, the one year that I
That
kept
noise
hitting.
just
You know,
drove him up the wall.
one year when I kept hitting all these mid-level jackpots, and I was there, and you guys were all gone. You had used up all your pennies and left, and I'm still there trying to get rid of my pennies. And it's
That's
like, because it was an odd thing. You're playing pennies, and you can bet them up to 5 at a time. And the progressive jackpot was like up to $60,000. So if you get the 7777, you get that $60,000. If you get the next jackpot lower is like $8.
Right.
So
It's either 8 or
So
50,000.
that night that Phil had more pennies and just kept going, the rest of us had gone to see Jimmy Guy at the Hotel Nevada, which was on the other side of downtown. And Amy, my wife, still had some pennies left. So she stayed with Phil behind to finish off her pennies. Not my wife then, but became my wife later. And by the time Phil had finished his pennies, he'd also gotten several cocktails. And by the time they got to the Hotel Nevada, my wife was white as a sheet. And I said, "Is everything okay?" And she says, "We got lost." And it's hard to get lost on one street in downtown Las Vegas. But Phil had enough cocktails that night that they got lost.
it was the alcohol. And of course, she was just being polite to me because she could have left.
No, she couldn't. A young woman can't walk alone by herself at that time from the Gold Spike to the Hotel Nevada.
So today, as you go further east of Fremont, what is considered the East Fremont District, that's like the hip, like kind of happening place these days. This was not the case 20, 30 years ago.
Not at all.
Tell me about a little of the places that are east of Fremont or on East Fremont.
Well, East Fremont, it was a distance enough that the average tourist was not going to walk this distance because it was really run down. It was gift shops and mostly clothes shops and like a cigar maker and stuff like that down there.
There's a wig store there and
a wig store,
crappy shoe store. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to the El Cortez, which was, I think it's got like 400 or 500 rooms. It's a fairly big place, but it's very old. From the 1940s. And it looks old and it looks vintage. At that point, it didn't look vintage. It just looked run down. And when you went inside, it was run down. It just felt tired, but it had cheap games. But then you could go even farther east where nobody would dare venture. No tourists went. And that was a place called the Western.
Like the edge of civilization.
Yeah, it was. It was like, it was the fringe. But you could go beyond the fringe to the Western,
which
beyond,
was this, and there was
this
more
place.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 400, 500 feet past the El Cortez, but honestly, it felt like miles. It felt so unsafe and dirty and grungy to get to there.
Yes.
You didn't see any other tourists in the Western. That place was the bottom rung, the absolute worst, which of course made it one of my favorites.
Of course. And you mentioned a bunch of places like Western, El Cortez, Vegas Club Plaza. All these places were owned by one guy, a guy by the name of Jackie Gone. And he actually lived on the top floor of the El Cortez, and he would come down and play poker with the customers and stuff. He was kind of an amazing guy, but he was a different, very different kind of casino owner than Bob Stupak, who we've talked about a lot. Can you talk a little bit about what the differences were between the two guys?
Yeah, well, I guess Jackie Gowan was pretty straightforward. There were no gimmicks with him. I mean, there were certain free things and certain deals you could get, but there was nothing he was a straightforward casino owning businessman. Didn't have any pretensions of being classier than he was, which was not very much. And he knew it, and he says, "Here it is. Here's a cheap place to gamble. We got some cheap deals. This is it. Boom." And
I felt like
everything was straightforward with him. And
I felt like Jackie really kind of built his empire by giving customers really a good value. You never felt ripped off or cheated or tricked in any way. And to be fair to Bob Stupak, he was kind of a carnival barker sort of a guy who would try and, figure out ways to kind of get you in the tent. But Jackie was not like that. He was, I feel like he was always about, if you provide a good value to the customer, they'll come back. And I think that's how he became successful.
Kind of makes sense that we would prank Stupak and not Gowan, because Jackie Gowan, he didn't set himself up to be trolled the way we trolled Bob Stupak.
Yeah, exactly.
I would never prank Jackie. We actually stayed on the same floor as him at the El Cortez. We just had our rooms at the El Cortez one time on the 23rd floor, which is where his suite was. So we could see his doors at the end of the hall, and we kind of watched for him, but we never saw him. Wow. But you could see Jackie all the time because he played. The Plaza was the only casino that dealt the game of Pan. It's because Jackie liked playing Pan, so he and his old cronies would play Pan at the Plaza, and then he played poker at the El Cortez too, and he played for $1. I mean, this guy owns 5 hotel casinos, and he would play dollar Pan, and apparently he got pretty grumpy when he lost too. But we had nothing but respect for Jackie, and I think we really gravitated toward his properties over time. And everyone always had good things to say about him because he didn't screw anyone and nobody felt like they got ripped off. The only time I ever felt like I got a raw deal from him was one time I bought his pound of pig breakfast plate for $5.99. And it turned out it wasn't a pound of pig. It was 8 ounces of ham and 8 ounces of salt.
Well, his cafe was named after Kitty, right? That was his wife.
Yeah, Careful Kitty, his wife.
Careful Kitty, yeah.
This is kind of sweet. We had a ritual of putting, we'd get a $5 chip with Jackie's face on it when we're at the craps table. And you lay it on the felt, and then you put a chip on top of it. That's called putting Jackie to bed, because we didn't want him to see us breaking his casino and winning all this money.
If he saw how well we were doing at the craps table, if we were cheering too loud, it would wake him up, and then he'd bring in the coolers
he'd be on the 23rd floor pounding that down button. I gotta get down there before they win anymore. One time at the El Cortez, we were playing dollar craps. There were 13 of us. We owned a table. Yeah. And we were so loud that my wife actually said, as she was approaching the casino from outside, she could hear us from outside the casino before she even got inside. But that same night,
yes,
it was a historic night. We just won so much money. Yeah. And that night, they comped us breakfast for 13 people. They wrote us a comp for 13. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was nice. Just a fair deal.
I was going to say, it was one of the first nights I met you, Burt, and you were betting. I was always on the cheap, and so I think I won maybe $200 and felt very disappointed because I saw there were folks, you and Robert and Matt, who were just making so much money because you were maxing out the odds, and we could not miss a point. We were just playing and playing, and the crew was on our side. That was the best night in Vegas.
Was that?
Many good times at the El Cortez for sure.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Was that the Shakes night?
Yes. So our friend Robert got nicknamed Shakes because he had to pee so bad in the middle of his roll that he started shaking.
And he was rolling.
Couldn't leave the table.
He was on fire. He was hitting everything, and
extra point, and he had to pee. So
he did not want to leave the table because he was on such a streak.
He was having I gotta pee shakes
really bad. And the thing is, because people
shakes.
Yeah, I mentioned it because he would always have this can of coins that he would shake. That's not why he was called Shakes, though.
But that's kind of why we called the El Cortez eventually Jackie's basement, because he lived upstairs, and actually you can rent his apartment now. I think as a suite, you can rent it. I think it's quite expensive, but you can rent it out. And I think a lot of it is intact as to how Jackie lived there. But then he you were down on the ground floor, like in his basement, just playing games and stuff. And we had so many great times in the El Cortez. But one place that Jackie also owned that wasn't quite as friendly was the Western. So talk a little bit about
that. Was
Western.
Like if you had rungs to his system or to his properties, like probably the Las Vegas Club was the nicest, then the Plaza, and then you got to the El Cortez, and then you got down to the Gold Spike, and then way down on the bottom rung, maybe submerged in water, was the Western.
Yeah. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Western was probably the only casino really anywhere that didn't have a carpet. It was a wooden floor.
It was a fake wood
floor.
It was like a
wooden
concrete floor.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the old days, they'd call them sawdust joints, right?
Yeah.
Because for places that were kind of low rent because they didn't have carpet, and then there were carpet joints. But Western was a real place that didn't have any carpet. The last one in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
the smell theme. The idea is the front of the Western was not even a door; it was basically like a roll-up garage door, so it was open to the air. And even still, walking in, you would get this wall of smell.
Yeah,
but it was not entirely smoke. It was smoke, but there was it was more body odor than anything else.
It was body odor. A lot of body. Yeah,
there was a lot of fragrances.
A wide open space and still you couldn't get that smell out.
There was fluvium too, like in the gutters and stuff. Like it was definitely that sort of fecal urine thing going on because you had to venture past the end of downtown out to kind of no person's land.
And I'm guessing it was
legitimately scary.
Oh yeah. It wasn't as scary once you got into the Western, but getting to the Western legitimately was scary. And I guess it was me. It must have been me that made us go.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
It was you. Yeah, totally.
So the Western is definitely scary to some degree. Is that the scariest place you guys had ever been? Dan, is that like the scariest
I think that's the scariest. Yeah. Though there was the Sunset Klondike. Would you tell me the name again? Because the sign just said Dyke on it. There was a lot of.
That was the main attraction to it.
It said the Dyke, the Sunset Klondike.
The
Casino.
Dyke Casino.
This is, it's kind of out of town. I was going to say on the way to Henderson, but I kind of lose my track of my directions once I'm out of the Strip. But this place was, you could tell it was derelict. For one thing, the sign, and we would drive by it on the way out to play craps. The Joker's Wild, which is cheap craps. And eventually, probably Matt said, let's actually go check this place out and look at it. So we parked dingy.
Parking lot was practically empty.
And this is scary in the sense of if they were going to set a haunted, like a horror film in Vegas, this would be the place. Like we walked. Yeah,
this was a place for ghosts.
Yeah. And the smell was, again, visible. There was like clouds and dim light, and most of the tables covered with vinyl, and like nobody in there. It was just like it was haunted and spooky and no action. And I kind of remember the bunch of us walking toward the bar. Somebody was at the bar serving drinks and nothing going.
If I recall correctly, there was a guy. Yeah, the bartender was also the security guard.
Likely.
And he had to clarify that they were indeed open.
Yeah, he had to say, they were.
Because even to the point we opened the door, we didn't know whether this place was open or closed. We're like, is it open? Is it closed?
Yeah.
What's going on?
There was one woman
Super
playing slot sitting at a slot machine playing,
and she had no lower jaw. It had just like fallen away. She was a zombie.
Well, also remember there was a coffee shop. There was a coffee shop that was not open and hadn't been open in a long time. And we walked in there and they had steam trays in the coffee shop, and we lifted the lids on the steam trays and they were filled with this dark, gooey liquid that God knows how long had been there.
Yeah, it looked like
there's a name
like a Denny's or something that had been just shut down, and nobody, and just the police taped it off and nobody could go in there for like 20 years, and it was like, and everything was still there.
It felt so dead. We could not stay for longer than about 10 minutes just to check it out. And then we were out.
And for me, it was one that Dan and Phil and Mike were with me the first time I went there. And that was Leroy's Sports Place, which was not a full-blown casino. It was just a sports book off of, it's now been subsumed by the Golden Nugget expansion, but it was off of Fremont Street on a street called First Street, just a couple doors down off of Fremont, and it was just a sports book, and we saw it. And so we went in there, and it's maybe the only time in my life where I've had like a record scratch moment where we walked into a room and everything went silent. And like all these grizzled old guys hunched over these tables with their pencils marking racing forms or whatever, all stared at us like, what the hell are you guys doing in here? You are not in the right place. And so, of course, we went back there. But it was essentially a smoky room with just some standing tables where you would get your racing forms or your betting forms. A bunch of old guys wearing like golf hats and glasses, writing stuff down, some black and white and fuzzy TVs here and there, big whiteboards that they wrote odds and stuff on, and then some vending machines that sold snacks and cigarettes. And that was it. I mean, it was... And the people in there was no nonsense. They didn't want a bunch of kids jackassing around in there. They wanted to gamble.
There's a scene in Scorsese's movie Casino, a short bit that was filmed in Leroy's. So if you want to see it, there is actually a scene that was filmed in Leroy's in Casino.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Cool.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
They finally came to accept us because we just kept going in there and kind of just.
Right.
I'm kidding. They don't think they ever accepted us.
No, they never accepted us.
Well, no, it's like, it's like, oh, you make your bet and get the hell out. It was like, which I always thought was kind of funny. You wouldn't go there to sit down and watch the game you had just bet on.
Oh, hell no.
No.
It was, you place your bet. We would, and because I would just bet with Matt because I don't, do much sports betting myself, but we would place bets there, and then we would go down to the Strip to Caesar's Palace and watch the game on their huge jumbo TVs. It's like going to have a bet at Leroy's.
Well, guys, thanks for all this. Unfortunately, with the description of a lot of these places, my gag reflex is starting to kick in. So I think we need to take one more break. But we'll be back in just a second to describe more terrible places, including perhaps the shittiest casino that you can visit today. And it sits right next to Las Vegas's newest fancy casino on the Strip. We'll be right back.
When you visit Las Vegas, you can enjoy yourself at Jackie Gaughan's Plaza Hotel at the top of Main and Fremont downtown. Stay in one of over 1,000 rooms and suites at the Plaza. Whether you're visiting or live in Las Vegas, you'll delight at the show of lights while dining in the Glass Dome Center Stage restaurant after the sun goes down. Any time of the day or night, you'll find something good to eat in the popular Plaza Diner. Take a break in the Omaha Lounge. Enjoy your favorite beverage and live entertainment. And if sports is your thing, don't forget the Plaza Sportsbook. You can keep tabs on your favorite sports teams. 24 hours a day, there is something happening at Jackie Gaughan's Plaza Hotel. Plenty of free parking, too. The Plaza Hotel, Main and Fremont, downtown.
And we're back in the Neon Gutter. We've talked a lot about terrible hotels from the past, but a number are still around, and they're all still terrible. You can experience these awful places yourself with a bus pass or car and just a little bit of courage. So guys, what places do you guys recommend to our listeners, if we can call it a recommendation?
So for me, there's a couple that stand out right now that are probably have the most character and are the most what I would call a shithole, and they're fun. And one other thing about shitholes is they're so happy to have customers, they let you get away with a lot more shenanigans. So Jerry's Casino in North Las Vegas, north of Fremont Street, it's pretty run down, but it has a pretty decent coffee shop, and
Coffee shop, good pie.
Yeah. If you're going to go in there, you're going to have a good time. It's not nice, but it's not terrible either. And the other one would be Poker Palace, which is really run down. And I've played blackjack next to a bucket of water or a bucket that's catching water coming through the ceiling during the rain. But they have $3 blackjack, and they have very good rules on that $3 blackjack.
I have to warn you though, that bucket of water is a pretty good poker player.
But it makes it great because if you need to take a bathroom break, you don't even have to stand up. You've got a bucket.
Yeah, you got a bucket right there.
So, Poker Palace is probably the dingiest casino left in Vegas that has table games. And I think that's a key too, is once they no longer have table games, they're no longer fun.
Yeah.
And right next to the newest resort on the Strip, Resorts World, is a place that I'm not sure I can recommend anyone going in, but it's sort of bizarre if you do. You want to describe that, Dan?
Yes, lots of fun. Which is actually, I always think of it as being right next to Circus because I think it's owned by Circus.
It's
And
between the two, sure.
And it has this little
this is
walkway that goes
going
between.
in, and it's derelict. There's no table games, but the back half of it is dedicated to storing wooden pallets. And it was just like it's all torn up. And then, in case you're a intravenous drug user, they do have intravenous needle disposal in the bathroom. So,
well, and you know, those needle depositories really tell me that Slots of Fun listens to their customers. They understand what they need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Slots of Fun is not fun, though. You know, we talked about a lot of shitholes where we've had a fantastic time, and Slots of Fun is just depressing. It's another case.
It was kind of fun for a while when they had
was.
that big craps table that almost, was like right out on the sidewalk. And
Yeah.
Giant
$2
stuff.
$2 Heinekens. Yeah, it was a fantastic place to have a good time.
Now
it was always dumb. It was always stupid and cheesy, but now it's and it's Slots A Fun. So
we also, last time we were in Vegas, took pictures of the one working light bulb on the outside of the Slots of Fun's wall. There was like one that was working and the rest were not. So take a picture of the last one before it goes out.
It may be the emptiest casino in town, but there's no surprise for that because there's hardly any even machines there, let alone, they had a snack bar there's nobody there. I didn't see a single employee the last time I was in there, maybe 2 customers. It's kind of bizarre for a place that's right out on the Strip.
It's more like
real waste of space.
It's more like parking lots of fun.
Well, thank you very much, guys. But I think that may be enough decay for one episode. But in our next episodes, we'll be revisiting the scene of some of these crimes. We're going to be recording our episodes live directly from Las Vegas with more memories of Fremont Street and a competition to see who can be the most like Bob Stupak. I've got my money on me.
Oh, would you like to wager on that?
I would, and we will.
I think we could all channel Bob Stupak pretty well, I think.
You're definitely not going to want to miss that. So please join us next time down here in the deep, dark depths of the Neon Gutter. We'll see you next time. The Neon Gutter is a Big Empire production. Randy Shandis, executive producer. Our incredible theme music is courtesy of Rosin Coven. Do you have something to say? Call our voicemail line at 775-400-2941. And for more episodes, vintage photographs and video, contact info, and those amazing trip reports, visit us at neongutter.com.
Vegas Haiku number 5. At Little Caesars, they deal blackjack backwards and pay on 22.
Cooter, where'd he come from?